So as a little kid, my mom worked at Fort Pickett in Blackstone, Virginia. She was a housekeeper there, and I always see the soldiers in uniform, see the airplanes, people jumping out of them. And I guess just as a little kid, even as far as back that I could remember, it just done something to me on the inside. And as I got older and I still would see them in the community, I liked the idea of being in a truck, being a part of something that was bigger than myself. So at 17, I found a recruiter and I signed up, begged my parents' permission. They finally gave in. My mom took the longest. I'm glad they did. It was the best experience of my life.
As a woman, I don't want to sound sexist, but were you a rarity? Just being in the military, you were.
So our whole unit was a rarity. So we were, like I said, a maintenance company, and we did high-level maintenance. So we took care of anything, just as a company as a whole, that you could think of having for your vehicles. And we were an interesting unit. So we had, I think, 45 to 50 females that our commander was responsible for. So I didn't feel like a rarity to be amongst the predominantly male unit because it was so many of us as well. And we gave them a run for their money. So they were, we also did convoys. So you could do convoys to different camps for various reasons. You would be convoy security for the civilian truck drivers that we had out there. And when you say were we a rarity, so a lot of us were willing to go on convoys when our male counterparts were not willing. So we stepped up and did what was required of us, proudly. And fearless, I guess, because we did it. I felt like we were fearless, like we didn't have a fear of going outside of the wire. I'm not going to say that it wasn't scary, but because you were going over with a group of people that you had such a strong commodity with, a sense of family, a sense of protection, it was almost a blanket of comfort to know that, you know, we're going into a dangerous situation, but I know that the people in front, to the back, left and right, have my back 100%. If you had to lay down your life for your battle buddy, then you knew that the person that was standing with you was prepared to do that. And I was prepared to do that as well for my counterparts. You may have thought, oh, I'm just doing my job in that moment. But as you get older and you get more depth and more knowledge and more understanding about life and sacrifices, you're like, I accomplished something major. And you know, our higher power blessed us to get back home safely. So we invaded in, I think it was 2001. So back then, I don't know if you're familiar with, they had rotations. They would call it OIF or OEF 1, 2, or what have you. It was Operation Iraqi Freedom and then Operation Enduring Freedom. So we were the second rotation of troops, boots on ground after 9/11.
Do you kind of keep that sense of survival with you in the civilian life?
You honestly, you do, because if I have to go across something in the road, my first thought is, why is it there? What if I run over it? What's going to happen? You just do it out of habit. Sometimes I find myself driving, you know, aggressively because I don't like being boxed in traffic. And on our convoys, you don't let the civilian vehicles over there get in between your convoys or stay too close to your convoys, so you have your breathing space and your proper distances. So when I'm on a highway and I get closed in, I get very anxious, and I need it to be open. I need to feel like I have an exit. Just this week, I was walking to get coffee with my coworkers, and there was a brown paper bag sitting on the sidewalk, top up, and they were walking and talking, but I lost tunnel vision. I'm not listening to what they're saying anymore because I want to know what is in this brown bag and why is it just sitting on a sidewalk. Like, who put that there and why? And, you know, what is in it? And if we get close to it, what's going to happen? And I shared that with them as we were walking, as we got closer to it. I'm like, I hate when people do this, just like put this bag here. I'm like, it's just weird, you know, why would they do it, you know? It makes you think and wonder, like, it just makes your mind race through so many different possibilities. So I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if there's a way to turn it off, but yeah, so I do suffer from that. So that's what they try to help us with here, understanding our new normal. You try to encourage yourself to come to events like this, but it's easy to come here. What's normal to other people is not always normal to us. And like, I may think like, well, why weren't you concerned with what's in the bag? And you may think, well, why do you care about what's in the bag? And it is just two different, like that's normal for you. And then me being concerned with what's in the bag feels normal to me. So my second deployment, I was married then, and I had a nephew that was only, I think my nephew was 3, maybe 2 or 3 at the time, and he was my buddy. So this time it was harder. I went to Afghanistan, but it was more emotional leaving home because I was leaving my husband and my nephew who I had grown extremely close to. So we traveled to Afghanistan in 2011. This was shortly after Osama bin Laden. We're stationed in Zabul at a base called Logman Air Force Base, and there I did IT work. So I had switched over from a generator mechanic to information security specialist. Anything that connected to the network, we were providing support for that. And by this time, you know, everything in our military is digitized. So a lot of your combat and a lot of that stuff is being controlled by pushes of a button, drones, surveys, making maps, landmarks, and all of that good stuff. Big brothers, camera feeds coming in of what's going on the fob and around the fob. So it was important to keep comms up at all times. Our unit there was responsible for medevacs, your 9-line medevac calls. Our job there was very important to respond to situations when they came up. We flew a lot there because we had to exchange encryption keys back and forth across the fobs. So you got to fly a lot in the Black Hawks, dropping off encryption keys to different remote sites that we were responsible for.
Would that be stressful? Was it a different
You
kind of
used a
experience?
perfect word. That deployment was extremely stressful. We didn't get a lot of days off. There were a lot of long days of working. And yeah, stress is a good way to word that. Yeah, that deployment was really, really interesting.
How long were you there?
We were there for 9 months. We should have been there for a year, but we ended up getting the deployment cut short for whatever reason, and we ended up getting to come home, which is probably good for a lot of us. When I came back home this time, my first deployment, I was isolated a lot, but nobody knew a lot about PTSD, and it wasn't a lot that was known about anything. So that disconnect and that uneasiness that you felt, there was no words to put with that. Like, you just felt different. So by this time, 2011, you come back home and you understand the disconnect. You come back home, and I felt it felt different. Like, okay, like yesterday I was in Tajikistan. It was cold as I don't know what, because you travel in Afghanistan, you travel back home through a Navy base in Tajikistan. And it was like you were there in a brutal cold, and then like the next day we were going to McDonald's to get food. It was just like weird. Like, okay, yesterday we were in the desert, today we're going to get McDonald's. So that was like the first morning or the first day when we got back. But then you interact with your family, right? So it's the hive being home, but then it becomes overwhelming because everybody wants to come see you. They want you to come and visit them, and all you really want is time to yourself, like a moment to decompress. Like, just let me settle in with whatever this is that's going on with me. And for myself, I didn't get a chance to do that right away. By the time I did go and get help, things were extremely compacted on top of each other emotionally for me. Like just, going to the grocery store. I remember one day I called my cousin and I'm like, I think I told her I was at Walmart and I was freaking out. It's just like so much going on in Walmart. It felt like it was loud. It felt like it was a lot of people in there, and it just felt overwhelming just to be in Walmart. And I'm like, can you just talk to me, while I'm in here? Because I was, I was by myself going into the Walmart. I didn't care to like have connections or with people. You're just really detached from having normal feelings or normal understandings of what other people may be going through. Because, for 9 months, it was just about you, the mission, your battle buddies, and what was going on around you. It was none of the external. It was no bills. There were no family arguments, disputes. You didn't have to deal with, any of that.
Life or death.
Yeah. It was just surviving, right? And then you come home and now you have to deal with life again. You got to deal with bills. You got to deal with arguments amongst family members that you may think are petty. You got to learn how to, reconnect, right? Have normal emotions and feelings again. And it's just not as easy as, snapping your finger and things go back to normal. Everybody comes back from deployment different. None of us come back the same. There's some level of difference that comes back with us. You changed, you grew, you developed, you saw more, you experienced more. When you come back home, you can't look at life through the same lens that you did before you left. I ended up having a mental breakdown. And I wanted to kill myself. I didn't understand what was going on with my life. It was just extremely overwhelming. I wasn't getting any sleep. I was having aches and pains. I wanted to be more isolated, more alone, less going out and doing stuff with my friends, even my military friends. Like I literally just wanted to be to myself. Like one of my close friends would always ask me, Tamekla, what's wrong with you? And I'd tell her, what do you mean? She said, well, you're staring off in space. I guess they would be having conversations and doing stuff, and there I am maybe in my own little world, and I don't even realize that I'm not a part of whatever it is that they got going on. I had a mental breakdown in the shower. I ended up having to go and check myself in at the VA hospital at the direction of the lovely ladies here, Miss Angela Hall and Laura Hack. They said, hey, you need to go check yourself in, and if I call there and you're not there yet, I'm sending the police to your house. So I went and got myself checked in, got some medications that work with me and help balance me out. Came for individual therapy as well as group therapy, and so I can contribute my life getting back on track and me feeling comfortable with accepting who I am. And I credit that to the Vet Center. They took the time out to have those one-on-one conversations with me, help me, dig into my insides and pull out things that I had buried in there, situations, help me understand what feelings and emotions were normal. How do you deal with them through cognitive behavior therapy? Because you lose your identity when you get out of the military. I got out of the military in 2016. I wasn't necessarily ready to get out of the military, but poor choices led me to get out. So there I was, lost, had no clue who I was, like, who am I without my uniform? Because even though I was a guardsman, I wore my uniform every day because I worked full-time at Fort Pickett. So I had worn a uniform from the time that I was 17 to the time that I was 33. So I have no clue who I am outside of my uniform. I was angry with myself. I had no confidence. I was just a nobody because when I put my uniform on every day, I was Sergeant Studivant, or, I was somebody. I had a purpose. I had a meaning in life, right? I was giving back to society, and that made me feel good. When I couldn't do that anymore, that hurt me. So, yeah, so Miss Hack helped me rebuild myself. She said, hey, you know what? You are still a soldier. You serve a different mission. And here we are.
That's really well put.
So,
Got really hit right here. You took time, take your time.
so yeah, the transition is not easy. It's nowhere near as easy as you would think it would be. Like, 'cause you're so programmed, you're so accustomed to routines. And it's not easy to get back to the rainbows and the joy.
It's, yeah.
So it's
So
a
what
challenge.
has this place given you? I mean, it sounds like a lifesaver.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it definitely saved my life. Helped me understand who I am outside of my uniform. It restored my faith, my confidence in myself. It helped me deal with my anger. You don't realize you're hurting people, yelling and screaming and talking to people like they're nothing and nobody. And usually our loved ones are the ones that we act out on, right? So I can meet you and you just piss me off. I don't want to embarrass myself in public because, for one, you never bring disgrace, to the uniform or you always carry yourself as a professional. So I'm not going to let you know in public that you just rattled me, but I'll go home and this is subconsciously, this is before I understood. I'm taking that out on the first thing that he says to me. I'm going to unleash on him for what he just said, for what you pissed me off for in public, what he did, what this person did. I'm going to unload it all right here on you. And that's what we do to our loved ones. You're at home, nobody's, there is no public, and you just lose it, To talk about it in a constructive setting, in a healthy way, has definitely been helpful because I can just tell my husband, like, instead of me going off on him, I can tell him how I feel and why I felt that way. So you're able to identify where you're disconnected. You're able to identify with your feelings, take ownership of your feelings, and then present yourself better to people when you have been, when you feel emotionally vulnerable or something has gotten to you. So.
And another part of the center, I understand, is being around peers?
Yes. So on every Monday, we get together, all of the female veterans, and we have our room full of love, and we all get to share. We get to connect with each other, and we get to say, sister, you are not by yourself. You are not alone. The same thing happened to me this week. I felt that way. I know what you're going through. It's a no judgment zone. When you're in that room, all that matters are the women that are in there with you. You ain't worried about nothing that's going on outside of that room. Just in that room with those ladies for that 1 hour that you get to spend with them. We get to cry together, we can laugh together, we can get angry, we can, verbalize our anger, we can do it all in a safe space with no judgment. When you're meeting with all of these other ladies, it's validation for you that you're not crazy. You're not losing your mind. These feelings are real. I don't know you, but I know you as relating to you for how you feel and what you're going through, what you're dealing with. That's an automatic connection between you and I, right there. I can tell your story, you can tell mine. It's the same thing. And it's those type of things that...
They're so important.
Yeah.
Get you through.
It gets you through. And days like today make everything worth it that you went through. Somebody celebrating you. Serenity and group, we had to read it and say what it meant for us. My favorite line in that is accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. So, all those bumps in the road that got me here is leading me to peace. So that's my favorite part of it, is accepting your hardships as a pathway to peace. I had no peace. All I was focused on were the hardships. I didn't realize that they could bring me peace. VA hospital sent me here because I needed in-depth therapy. So they said, hey, we got this place that you can go to. And they sent me here. And so, but we're all macho, right? You never think about suicide. If you would have asked me, you know, in 2011, would you ever think? I'm like, that is the stupidest thing ever. I don't know why people would want to kill themselves. You don't understand it until it happens to you. And the reason that I called them, because when you go through mental health, they start, so you got weapons, or, so I didn't have my weapon, because they say, you can't have it, your husband has to put it away. And I called them that day, not to get help from them. I called them cursing her out because I want her to tell my husband to give me my gun. Yeah. And she says, no, I'm not doing that. And I said, how, you can't tell me I can't take my own life? It's my life. I do what I want to do with it. Tell him to give me my gun. She said, you need to go and check yourself in at the hospital. So that was the whole reason that I called them, was to make him give me my gun back. So it's tricky for my husband because he works in the mental health. He works in the mental health in the civilian sector.
So, well, he knew that.
So he knew that, but for us, we don't see it. I didn't feel like nothing was wrong with me. So for him, it was hard. And we don't listen to our spouses, right? He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know me. But when we come here, we've done marriage counseling. Here, you can do PTSD marriage counseling, because we put our spouses through a lot, and I see Ms. Hall for that. She gives me good advice, gave us both good advice and good suggestions. So, yeah, but between the three of them, my husband said, you're going to get out of here and go get help, and them reinforcing it. And here I am 3 years later. You can have your relapse days, right? But you can deal with them a lot better when you got a foundation. On your relapse days, you deal with it, and tomorrow it might be better or might not, but eventually you'll get back to your happy place if you try. Gotta try.
So much.
Thank y'all.